We return now to our top story tonight, the ongoing diplomatic battle over the war in Ukraine. And joining me to break it all down is Mark Toth, foreign policy analyst and co-founder of Intrep 360. Good evening, sir.
Oh, good evening. Great to be back. Thank you.
So, this meeting between Donald Trump and Volodymyr Zelenskyy has ended moments ago. What are your first impressions of this sit-down? I mean, we had Donald Trump talking about Zelenskyy having endured a lot. We've endured it with him. We're making great progress. But then he'll talk about, well, both of them, Volodymyr Zelenskyy and Vladimir Putin, are great at negotiating. So is Ukraine back at square one, or is it picking up a win tonight?
Yeah, I don't know that we're back at square one. I think what we are is back kind of in a groundhog holding moment until this meeting between Putin and Trump takes place in a couple of weeks in Budapest. Clearly, Trump wants to see what leverage he's created. You have a situation here where Putin himself has come to Trump yesterday and said, I want to talk. And they had that discussion. Now, clearly, Putin's worried about something. He's either worried about his economy or he's worried about how the battle is playing out in Ukraine and his ability to keep his forces supplied with weapons and munitions, given the critical attacks on his energy structure, or both, right? And so from that standpoint, Putin clearly is trying to play for time here. Now, I don't think that means Putin's getting close to giving up his war or getting to some kind of peace deal. He might agree to some type of temporary ceasefire, but we're just not going to know these things until next week. For right now, my initial takeaway from what Trump was saying is that he's trying to create leverage with both sides, but maybe a little bit more with Putin than people will realize right now. I think the concern is, and it's understandable, that it may be Ukraine paying the price, but we just don't know that yet.
Creating leverage from both sides sounds like what we've seen since Trump came into office.
Exactly. No, he's done this before. And I think, though, what's been good, what Zelenskyy has learned since that disastrous meeting, which in my opinion wasn't his fault in the Oval Office, it was J.D. Vance's and Trump egging him on. Zelenskyy has learned how to patch that relationship up. And I think it's a fairly good one at this point, where you saw today, Zelenskyy was still adamant about, hey, the best way to push Putin into meaningful ceasefire discussions is giving us Tomahawks, giving us things like 155 artillery, giving us the air defenses. All those kind of things are the best way forward. And you weren't getting the same kind of reactions from Trump or J.D. Vance that you saw in the Oval Office previously. So I think that's good. I mean, Zelensky's learned his lesson here. He's learned how to manage Trump, and I think he's in a much better place. And that's why I'm still hopeful here, even though we are kind of in this holding pattern for 2 weeks, unfortunately, because I don't think a lot's going to change from Russia's standpoint.
Let's talk about Tomahawks in just a moment, but how much of a curveball for President Zelenskyy was Trump's call with Vladimir Putin 24 hours ago, this planned meeting in Budapest? I mean, did Putin get into Trump's head at the last minute, and was that bad news for Ukraine?
Yeah, no, it definitely was a curveball. I think you're right to characterize it that way, because at this point, with Trump coming off huge wins in the Mideast in terms of securing the ceasefire in Gaza, in which he basically united much of the Mideast in an extraordinary way to get everyone on board with that settlement. It's still moving forward, albeit slower than people are hoping for. I think Zelenskyy was hopeful that he could ride that same momentum of saying, look, Trump, you put a win on the board in the Mideast. Now let's put one on the board in Eastern Europe. And I think that's the mindset that Zelenskyy had going into this meeting today. But Putin, sensing that, realizing that Trump had just won, is trying to triangulate that. I mean, it was very clear that Putin is worried himself about the leverage, the power that Trump has gained on the world stage, because he came out and congratulated his efforts as opposed to criticize them. So that I thought was noteworthy, especially when you consider how much Russia has lost over the last 2 years. Their key ally in Bashar Assad getting kicked out of Syria and the like. He's only seen losses in the Mideast. Trump has only seen gains. So I think that was a bit of gamesmanship on Putin's part as well. But, definitely you're right to ask that question. It's a curveball. I think it was the only curveball that Putin was able to throw, which was one which is designed to play for time. And he got it, at least 2 weeks.
Speaking of the Middle East, earlier this week you wrote that, quote, in the blink of an eye, Trump is suddenly winning World War III. Now, earlier this week, Trump also told us, quote, it's time to get Russia done. But after this 2-hour phone call with Vladimir Putin, we now have this proposed Budapest summit. and these, well, seemingly empty warnings about sending Tomahawk missiles to Kyiv anytime soon. I mean, is Donald Trump really winning the West's war, or is he being played by the Kremlin?
Look, it's a fair question. You know, Colonel John Sweet and I, my co-founder of Interrupt 360, we both argue that, look, this is a World War III. It just doesn't look like Hollywood's version of it. It's more death by 1,000 cuts. It's hybrid war that you've already seen in your country with the attempted bombing of the DHL bombers and the like, the drone incursions, et cetera, that have happened. And so what we're arguing is that, look, Trump, in a masterful way, let's give him credit here, was able to get this win in the Mideast in such a way that it had far-reaching implications. One of those implications was simply to apologize here. A cat's coming in the way. One of these implications was that he could then play this for a win in eastern Ukraine. And we're hopeful of doing that. He does that. And so the cards are there for them. He has the leverage to make this a win. Now, whether he does or not, remains to be seen. But the cards are there. And I think if we step back, give him some time, I think he can still play that. Putin is in a weakened condition. And if Eastern Europe can be held, if that can remain a win for the EU, if Ukraine can be joint members with that, even ideally in NATO, then that's going to also represent a loss, as Colonel Sweet and I wrote, with respect to China, because they're no longer going to be able to count on Russia weakening the U.S. by this commitment in Ukraine. So that scenario that we outlined in our article is still there.
Tomahawks has been the big issue in recent days and recent weeks, and a big topic of discussion. Donald Trump saying tonight, hopefully we can end the war without Tomahawks. Volodymyr Zelenskyy responding before that working lunch by saying, look, we need Tomahawks. Maybe we can give you thousands of drones. I mean, is Donald Trump, in your mind, serious about this Tomahawk idea, or are we getting stuck in his rhetoric?
Yeah, I think you hit it on the head. We're getting stuck in his rhetoric a little bit. Look, Trump is his businessman at heart, and so he's looking for leverage. And the Tomahawks, in his mind, may be that point of leverage that he sees. Now, I agree with Zelenskyy's viewpoint that the Tomahawks indeed are leverage, but they've got to be given in order for that to be had. I think Trump is just trying to get Putin to the table by toying with him whether or not he'll give Tomahawks ultimately, which can reach Moscow, can reach the Kremlin, if they decided to do that. But more importantly, it can reach drone installation sites far away that are key to Putin being able to continue to wage his terror war, if you will, against Ukraine. So, my own interpretation is everyone to kind of stand down for a little bit. Let's give Trump some time. I do think he's toying with Tomahawks with Putin, and it will tell. And the fact is he didn't push back very hard against Zelenskyy's argument there that Tomahawks could be a game changer in the sense of that they could force Russia sooner than later to the negotiating table, and in a meaningful way. Putin might be willing to meet, but he's not going to change his mind at this point. Just not enough game changers yet that he's faced with.
Looking ahead to this Budapest summit, I guess the big question is, will Hungary be another Alaska, where Donald Trump and Vladimir Putin talk and then Moscow ramps up its attacks on Ukraine?
Yeah, it's a fantastic question. And sadly, I think it's going to be yet another Alaska. I think Putin simply here is playing for time. I think it's evidence because yesterday there was a massive attack just before the Trump-Putin phone call. And this is something that the Russians typically do. 300 drones, some 37 missiles were fired at Ukraine across, not just on the front lines, but as far into the western areas of the country as well. And I think there's just Putin signaling that nothing much is going to change, even though he's bought this 2 weeks for himself, at least in terms of the Tomahawks, most likely not getting approved for Ukraine. But I think it is going to just be Groundhog Day. We're going to look up and we're going to basically have the same takeaways that we did before, that Putin came to buy time, but he didn't come to buy peace for the region, sadly.
And lastly, we're running out of time, but is there an argument to be made here that meeting with Vladimir Putin again is the wrong move for Donald Trump? That making up with Xi Jinping, sitting down with him in Beijing and pushing him to make a call to Vladimir Putin is the only way to a lasting peace deal in Ukraine?
Yeah, I agree. Personally, I would have preferred that Trump not taken this apple, because I think it's somewhat of a poisoned apple to show up. Clearly, he should have recognized in my mind that Putin was desperate. For him to call, for him to ask for the meeting, I think he should have interpreted that he's got all the cards, meaning Trump. So why give in to that? But I think Trump, in his mind, he's a deal maker, and deal makers like to beat face to face. And you're correct. It would have been a much better play to use that leverage with Z to basically say, look, this is kind of game over. If we want it to be, let's come to a better peace deal. But Trump didn't do that. He's chosen this route instead.
Mark Toth, foreign policy analyst and co-founder of Intrep 360. Thank you again for your time.
Thank you so much, and I apologize for my cat there.
We always welcome a cat on TVP World.
Thanks.
And that's all for World News tonight. Do stay with us here on TVP World for more. I'm Aaron Dahmen. Good night.